Loud. Alrighty, everybody. This is like I guess our third recording for today. I'm going to try and knock out as many of these as I can, just because they're so incredibly time consuming, whether we meet in person in the classroom or whether we're doing this virtually. So the previous couple of recordings, we got through the muscles of facial expression number one and the other muscles of the head and muscles involved with chewing or mastication in recording number two. This is session number three, where we are going to deal with the muscles of the neck region. Okay, so on this image that you see right here, basically, it's going to be these muscles in this triangular area. We actually have two triangles here. We have sort of a posterior triangle, which I'm sort of delineating right here with the tip of the pen. And then we have an anterior triangle of the neck, which I'm sort of highlighting right here. So we have muscles of the anterior triangle and muscles of the posterior triangle. Now, that's sort of what we're going to be covering today. This thing can rotate beautifully. So, the muscles, we also have a few muscles of the back of the neck as well, quite a few. Okay, these models, this one here typically run MSRP new for about $4,600. I was able to score this thing for like 4 cents on the dollar, $200. And like 100 of that was just for shipping. So of course I'm going to grab a good deal like that if I see one. Also, I just posted up to Canvas a complete list of all of the muscles on our word list and on our models that show the origin, the insertion, and the action of these things. Okay, so dealing with muscles of the neck. I left off previously at what's called the sternohyoid. So the sternohyoid muscle, I really can't bring that model any closer. However, I can bring the camera closer to the model because the thing does weigh a ton. Let's drop this down a bit and rotate upwards. Okay, I think this is good. So we got the sternum here or the top of the sternum, manubrium bone really, and then we have the hyoid bone right here. So we have a muscle here. I guess its number is like 125 here on this model. So let me just highlight it here. It goes to the actually 124, that's a 4 there. So you can see I'm highlighting the insertion on the hyoid bone, the origin, whoops, make sure that's actually visible here. Shoot, you guys have a totally different view than I have. So let's just lift this up, and then rotate the camera head down, lift up, and rotate down again. See? Doing this stuff in person is 80 million times easier than trying to do everything via recording. So you can totally see here. Oh, come on, my damn arm's in the way of the camera. That's so annoying. Anyway, you got the clavicular notch of the manubrium, superior part of the manubrium bone here, which of course is a part of the sternum overall, or breastbone overall. Sternum's a separate bone. Anyway, right here is I guess you could say technically this would be the origin of the sternohyoid, and then the insertion up here is on the hyoid bone of that sternohyoid. On this particular specimen, that sternohyoid does not look super prominent, but it actually really is. Okay, so what does the sternohyoid do? Well, it's kind of going to bring down the hyoid bone, not only the hyoid bone, but the entire voice box or larynx, which is kind of this blue thing right here. We will talk more about this larynx when we talk about the respiratory system, and we talk about what's called the upper respiratory tract. Okay, so the sternohyoid is kind of fairly well visible. Now, we have another muscle that's called the sternothyroid. Let me see if I can get this focused enough there so you can actually read the numbers on this model. Now, these numbers that they hand painted on here are kind of on the small side. So sternothyroid is going to run to this blue thing here, this cartilage, and that should be this deeper muscle here. So sternohyoid is the big one here on the outside, and then we have this littler one on the inside, which is the sternothyroid. Sternohyoid goes to the hyoid muscle, hyoid bone, and then sternothyroid goes from the superior surface of the manubrium here laterally to this blue thing, which is the representation, artist representation of the larynx or voice box. Now, the head comes off of this sagittally. Let's see, everything is just kind of rather tightly fitted here because this model was in a doctor's office for many years. Ooh, lost his brains, can't have that. This model was sitting in a doctor's office for many years and didn't get a whole lot of usage. You know what I do like about it though? Laterally, it shows that genioglossus muscle beautifully. Mylohyoid on the bottom, genioglossus superiorly located above that. I guess you could say deep to that. Our other view, when I did the previous recording, didn't show that. Not only that, we have the interior view of the oral cavity, and we have these styloglossus muscles coming down here to sort of show where they insert on the inferior base of the tongue. I should have had this thing in here this morning when I did the other recordings. I didn't want to go get it because the thing weighs a ton, and I have to walk like the length of a football field to the other side of this property where I have a couple other houses. Anyway, so we got that here. Now, what do we have next? We just got the sternothyroid. Omohyoid is the next one. So, omohyoid bone, a muscle. Why am I thinking bones? That is just so weird, isn't it? Yes, I didn't get enough sleep. Too much partying this weekend. I shouldn't be doing that when I have a ton of video to record. Okay, there we go. Omohyoid. Actually, this is the next muscle with two bellies. So right here, we have one belly of the omohyoid, and then it's going to go underneath the clavicle bone to the shoulder blade or scapula. Sort of going to find the coracoid process there. So this omohyoid, superior belly, and then there's a little band of connective tissue, which this particular model does not show that well. Here's the inferior belly of the omohyoid on this view, and then inferior omohyoid on this view, inferior belly of the omohyoid, and then superior belly of the omohyoid. Make sure everything's visible here and my hand's not in the way. So on this side, there we go, down here, you can see I'm highlighting it with a pen, inferior belly of the omohyoid. The superior belly, it's not going to be really visible on this side. Maybe right here sticking above this really thick ropey muscle here. Okay, so that omohyoid, it has two bellies, anterior and posterior. I said superior, inferior, anterior, posterior. Well, I guess we could say the origin is on the superior margin of the scapula or shoulder blade. So we follow it down here. We can rotate this thing around. It has it sitting on a hole, the thing's sitting on a hinge. So superior margin of the scapula back here, kind of covered by this muscle, is the origin of that muscle. Now, insertion, obviously, drop the camera down and then make it look up. Insertion, obviously, is right here on the base of the hyoid. Okay, so what does it do? It depresses the hyoid and retracts the hyoid. Again, it has some function in speech, movement of the mouth and the floor of the oral cavity, and also deglutition. Thyrohyoid bone, a muscle. We can actually see a thyrohyoid here. I should have brought my respiratory model in because that shows all these muscles of the thyroid area really nicely. This is kind of hinky here. It's going to be represented differently on different plastic models. Let's see. I moved this closer, so now I have to refocus. Okay, thyrohyoid. Blue is thyroid cartilage here, and white number 7 is hyoid bone. Thyrohyoid muscle is going to run from the thyroid cartilage to the hyoid bone here. Now, this muscle that's cut, you can see this little rectangle here. That is just the cut version of the sternohyoid. We had to get rid of this, all this external musculature here to see some of these features underneath. Okay, so sternohyoid, thyrohyoid obviously goes from the thyroid cartilage to the hyoid bone, and that's going to depress the hyoid or elevate the larynx. Speech, swallowing functions here, mainly speech and other things. Swallowing or deglutition, there's some muscles deep underneath all of this, deep behind all of those superficial muscles involved with that. Okay, so that's pretty much the anterior triangle of the neck. Now, so once again, anterior triangle of the neck, this part right here, or this part right there. Posterior triangle of the neck, this area. Okay, so to deal with the posterior triangle muscles, let us lift up our camera. I need to get that annoying cursor out of there because I keep thinking you guys can see it. So I'm just going to turn my mouse off completely, and that will solve that. There we go. Okay, so first and foremost, above all others, we have a very prominent sternocleidomastoid muscle. So right here is that sternocleidomastoid muscle. So this muscle kind of bifurcates at the base there, going to originate, I guess we could say, on the proximal or medial end of the clavicle, as well as the manubrium, breastbone down here. And it's going to insert up here on the mastoid process of the skull. So we're going to have two of these, one on the left side, one on the right side. Our version on the right side here is sort of cut down here so we can see everything underneath that's deep to it. Sternocleidomastoid flexes the head when both right and left contract. So it basically allows you to look down at your feet. When only one sternocleidomastoid contracts, right side or left side, basically you rotate your head. It's like you're going to make a lane change on a freeway and you look over your shoulder because you don't trust your mirrors. That's me because I've driven so many different cars. It's like after a while, you're always switched on until you sell all your fun cars and then you get switched off. So you turn your head from one side to the other. Technically, that's called lateral rotation when you're looking to the side. Well, each sternocleidomastoid muscle will laterally rotate that head. Okay, next up are scalenes. Anterior, middle, and posterior scalenes. Let's elevate that camera platform and look down. So, I guess this is an okay view, not the best, not the worst. So this model, one problem I have with it is that there's the way the thing goes together here. Anterior, whoops, there we go. Let me make sure I'm tracing this correctly and I'm not obscuring the camera with my head or hand or anything. There we go. Oh my God, getting a stiff neck turning around here. I need like 3 or 4 flat screen wall monitors in here, each one 80 inches, high def, so I don't have to look around my shoulder. Anterior, middle, and posterior scalene muscles, also called anterior scalenus, middle scalenus, and posterior scalenus for the Latinized terms. Well, these are all going to sort of originate up there on the skull around the area of the mastoid process. And, well, actually, you know what? They're actually going to really originate on the transverse processes of thoracic, cervical vertebrae. So anterior and middle, transverse processes of C3 to C6. Let's rotate this around. Can we even see C3 to C6 here? Why, yes, we can. So I'm thinking this might be a little bit high, probably C3, C4, C5, C6, C7, And now I got the thoracics. So that's sort of where they're going to insert, actually originate. What am I saying? Originate. Remember, the origin of each muscle is the less movable point of attachment. The insertion is the more movable point of attachment. Okay, and where are these going to insert? Anterior and middle on the body of rib number 1, which is kind of buried in here. And then the posterior scalene is going to go down and kind of insert on the body of rib number 2. So I have another nice model back here that shows this perfectly. This belonged to a personal injury attorney. And then the guy retired. He used this as a courtroom exhibit, trying to win settlements for his clients. You know, you get in a car accident, you know how it works. You're going after everybody's insurance company, trying to maximize the payout on your end. And let's elevate this, bring it back, tilt it up. There we go. So we kind of have rib number 1 here, rib number 2, anterior, middle, posterior scalene. This here is what's called the cervical, well, actually he has brachial plexus. This nerve is going to go innervate some of the arm muscles there. There's a lot to say about this model, but if we rotate it around, we can see hold on. This one does not have a swivelly base, so I got to lift it up like that. There we go. This is a nice model. All the cervical vertebrae are color-coded blue, thoracics regular bone, lumbar blue. There we go. Much better. So you can see spinous processes of cervical vertebrae and flip the goddamn camera. There we go. Now I can see where I need to be. And let's get this background, nice white background for the right videographic conditions. There we go. That was shading everything. So we rotate this way. You can totally make out the insertion of these muscles on the transverse processes of these cervical vertebrae. Very nice model this is for that particular person's specialty in the courtroom, which is basically spinal, cervical injuries and car accidents. You know, the legal profession is kind of like the medical profession in that you can specialize in very specific cases and you can get very, very good in your specialty. And then if you're really good, people will get referred to you. You don't need to advertise. The business just lands in your lap, so to speak. Okay, good reason to get a good reputation in whatever it is you choose to practice in life. Won't help you all the time, but it's like in a video game franchise, having a good reputation and a good work ethic. Sometimes it's a boost you can use some of the time carefully. It's not going to automatically make you a millionaire, but it's one of those many things that helps. Okay, so that's it for the scalenes. They elevate the rib cage. They lift your rib cage up and they flex and rotate the neck a little bit. Now, let's flip this around. First of all, let's bring my camera platform down a little. Actually, you know, this actually works better up. So flip this around a bit. Most of what you should see here is missing. There's a big trapezius muscle here. So how's about, let's see, there we go. This is the right control. Let's flip this down to this smaller muscle model down here. Okay, so I got this like 14 or so tall muscle model here. And the trapezius muscle. It's a complicated thing when you get right down to it. There we go. This is about as far as I can angle that camera. So we're just going to look at the superior portion of the trapezius muscle right here. You could argue the trapezius muscle is two components. You got a superior portion, and then you have an inferior portion. On many animal species, the trapezius is actually 3 distinct muscles. On a human body, it's referred to as a single unit. That being said, there's actually two functionally very different components to this muscle. And this superior portion, it does not have the same action as this inferior portion down here. So that being said, let's rotate this back up to the big model and refocus. And let's just lift that up a little bit more and flip it around. So superior portion of the trapezius, mostly shown here. Inferior portion of the trapezius would come down kind of like, whoops, there we go, kind of like that. Sort of as much as I can form it, where the shape of where it should be with my hands without blocking the camera. So origin is going to be what's called the nuchal ligament and spinous processes. Whoa, snap. Good thing that's a dining room chair there. Let's bring that forward. There we go. So the nuchal ligament basically joins a lot of the spinous processes, and occipital portion of the skull comes down. So the trapezius muscle is going to join the spinous processes, I should say, originate upon the spinous processes of these vertebrae here. I need to pressure wash that thing gently there. It's so dirty. I forgot I put it away after last semester without the dust cover, and now I'm paying the price. I need to go to Home Depot, buy a big dust cover for this. Okay, so C7 for the superior portion. Now for the inferior portion, all the way down to the 12th thoracic, which is way the heck down. Actually, here we go, way the heck down here. That one actually comes out. I don't want to pull everything out here. So the part that's superior does one thing, the inferior portion does something quite different. Okay, let's tighten up that camera adjustment there. Okay, insertion is, can we see this? Now we can see a little bit better. Acromion, spine of scapula, and let's elevate this camera platform, tip it down a bit, rotate this, and I guess, you know what? There we go. If I can bring it forward like that, the distal or lateral end of the collarbone or clavicle there. So that trapezius has this big U-shaped or V-shaped insertion as it comes up and or goes down and to its various origins. So what this muscle does is it stabilizes. The superior portion elevates and retracts the scapula. The inferior portion retracts it and rotates it. So complicated muscle this be. It's really two muscles instead of one, but in terms of organ structure, it's in one package. In terms of innervation, several packages. Next up is the levator scapulae. So this is the image that most folks will see in lab and on photographs and in the textbook diagrams. I'm going to grab a little flashlight and provide myself some auxiliary lighting. Oh my God, that's a little too much lighting. This is a Zebralight brand flashlight. Not my favorite brand. I hate the user interface that everyone was raving about them 10 years ago, and it's like, okay, whatever. Well, unfortunately, we got a little too much reflection here. Glossy surfaces right here. So you see the trapezius come down, and the very next muscle that sort of goes underneath the trapezius here, if you can sort of follow the fibers, it goes underneath, and it's like it's going back to something in here. This right here is the levator scapulae muscle. Sternocleidomastoid blocks the view of that. Anterior, middle, posterior, middle, anterior scalenes here, and then levator scapulae. Big guy right here. Okay, So we remove the trapezius as two additional ones. Levator scapulae originates on the transverse process of, again, C1 to C4 up here. And then it's going to go down and insert right here on the kind of like the superior surface of the scapula. So I guess we'd probably say medial border, superior angle. Remember, superior angle down the medial border here. So, or vertebral border. So from this angle here, levator scapulae is kind of completely missing along with the trapezius. So we really can't see where it actually inserts on this. We'll have to take the textbook's word, but right about here is where we see the bony structure. Okay, let's rotate this way. At this point, I'm going to have to go to the photographs I made of the models that are posted on Canvas. So while I do that, let us just halt the recording. Oh, come on, I turned my mouse off. Let's stop the recording. Okay, we have resumed recording, and now let's share with our screen here. So my computer controls, everything are starting to act glitchy and weird. The response time is really slow. It's like, I don't dare go gaming today because PC lag, if it's on my computer, is going to be insane. This, of course, is a SOMSO model, SOMSO brand. So sternocleidomastoid. Inferior belly of the omohyoid, or posterior belly, I guess inferior belly of the omohyoid, and then anterior, middle, little triangle in the middle here, posterior scalene here, and then right here, this little triangle here would be the levator scapulae, and then the trapezius comes down and covers everything here on this view. Over here on this side, we got the hyoid bone here. You can see the white mass of the hyoid, base of the mandible. You know, we have a digastric or mylohyoid visible there. You know, base of the mandible. What do we have? This is all previous stuff like a masseter muscle, depressor anguli oris, in levator, actually depressor labii inferioris up here, risorius, zygomaticus major, orbicularis oris muscle, pectoralis major down here. Okay, so this is one view. So I'm on Canvas here. Different view right here. Sternocleidomastoid is front and center. Superior belly of the omohyoid goes down and back. Inferior belly of the omohyoid here. Let's see, we have a actually a thyrohyoid muscle here. Sternothyroid down here. And let's see, we have our scalenes around the corner. I mentioned, I made a big deal about this. This on the models is sort of like a levator labii superioris, and off to the side zygomaticus minor, but technically the levator labii superioris is this whole thing. And in theory, in real life, we can't really see the zygomaticus minor muscle. It's underneath here. Zygomaticus major, risorius is unlabeled on this diagram. Depressor labii inferioris, mentalis, and depressor anguli oris. Auricularis muscles up here. So again, that's just old review. Platysma muscle covers what we're supposed to be talking about on this little video section here. Here we go. So this brand, this model, this big portion that's not actually in question here is the trapezius. Right here with the hole in it, levator scapulae. And then we have the splenius and semispinalis capitis muscles visible in this skinny little triangle back here. What else do we have here? Posterior, middle, actually what am I saying? Posterior, whole big thing here, middle, this tiny little buried triangle here, and anterior scalene. And then coming down here, let's see that one. Did I even mention that one on the on here? That is not the sternohyoid. That's going the wrong way. You know what? Actually, that's the anterior scalene. This is the middle scalene, posterior scalene. We got some other stuff in here. Let's see. Here we go. This is the image I was looking for. So right here with the trapezius, this part here pulled off and removed. Here we go. This is it. Levator scapulae in its full glory. Actually, here we go. Levator scapulae right here in its full glory. Follow it down to the medial, I guess, superior angle, medial border of the scapula visible here. And then we have posterior, middle, and anterior scalenes. And right here, this one is the semispinalis. Actually, what am I saying? This is the splenius capitis. So we have a whole bunch of spinal column back muscles. If it ends in capitis, it's going to insert on the skull. If it ends in cervicis, it inserts on a cervical vertebrae. If it ends in thoracis, they insert on a thoracic vertebrae and they originate further down. So this is the splenius capitis. See the origin on some of the nuchal lines of the occipital bone going up towards the mastoid process of the temporal bone there. And it's going to originate on the nuchal ligament, this big white band of connective tissue that runs across down the spinous processes of a lot of the vertebrae, in this case, C7 down to thoracic number 6. So the origin of this muscle is kind of goes all the way down here. Now, this is, again, going to go to the mastoid process of the temporal bone and part of the occipital bone as well here. What's this going to do? Extend the head. How do you extend a head? Very simply, you look up. So there's a footprint on the ceiling. Look up at it. You've just extended your head at the neck. Also, that's if both of these right and left contract at once, they'll extend the head. If just one right or left contracts and the other one stays relaxed, then you'll have rotation of the head. You look to the right, you look to the left, like you're looking over your shoulder to make a lane change, to make sure no one's in the blind spot of your car's side view mirrors. Now, this little dude right here, this skinny little triangle here, semispinalis capitis. So all of this is ordinarily obscured by the trapezius muscle. This little triangle here isn't even visible on a whole lot of models. This is going to originate on the transverse processes of C7 all the way down to T12. So this connects to a lot of the vertebrae. C7 to T12, 13 vertebrae. Going to insert, as you can see, on the nuchal line of the occipital bone. And what does this do? Again, you look up at the footprint on a ceiling. You extend the head. Well, heck, 4th of July is coming up. So everyone's going to be looking up at all the cool fireworks. Extend your head. Also, and vertebral column, since this goes down to all of the vertebrae down here, it'll have some function in arching the back. If just one of these muscles on the right or the left contracts, then you'll rotate the head in that particular direction. So again, semispinalis capitis, splenius capitis, levator scapulae, and then posterior, middle, anterior scalene. So let's go up here with this trapezius in place. Let's double check, make sure everything's correct here. Yes. I guess we can see the semispinalis capitis buried in this little triangle, and then splenius capitis, levator scapulae, this big one here, and then posterior buried, middle a little bit more prominent, anterior going in this part. It's also the anterior scalene buried. Deep muscles are buried under everything. There's blood vessels, nerves, other muscles, layers of fascia covering them up. What I like about this model here and this particular view beautifully, perfectly shows hyoid bone, thyrohyoid muscle, and then the thyroid cartilage is completely buried under all of this stuff here, but that's the thyrohyoid bone underneath, deep to the superior belly of the omohyoid. We have a little ligament in the middle here, and the inferior belly of the omohyoid. Omos is another region for shoulder. So again, the omohyoid, it's basically going to originate on the superior surface of the scapula or omos region and go to the hyoid bone up here, hence its name. Okay, so again, different view, we covered this one. So those are hard to see, hard to get muscles. Okay, next up will be muscles of the back. So I'm gonna stop recording here and then we'll start another video session.